Hi guys, it's Mrs. Piacenti and Mrs. Dagler. We are going to be working on pages 39 and 40 today. We are doing some long division with integers. The beautiful thing is though, you can use your calculator for most of these. We do want to go over 2 on each page the long way, just in case you don't have your calculator with you. On your test, type it all in your calculator. We're not going to require you to do it the long way. So the first example is 9 and 52/100 divided by -7. So the first number always goes inside the division bar, okay? Or like we say, the top number goes in the box. So you're going to write the decimal place or problem as long division. You're going to bring that decimal place straight up, and then you're going to do long division. After you get your answer, you apply integer rules. So let's start with this first one. So I have 15.5 divided by 5. I'm actually going to move this a little bit because I wrote too high up. So 15.5 divided by 5. I'm not writing the negative. We'll work with that after. So now I'm going to bring this decimal point straight up right here. Now, can 5 go into 1? No. Can 5 go into 15? Yes, 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. Subtract 0, and I'm going to bring down the 5. 5 goes into 5 one time. 1 times 5 is 5. With none left over. So my answer is 3.1. But now I ask myself, is it positive or negative? Well, remember, we're doing integer rules for multiplying and dividing. Those are the same. So same signs are positive, different signs are negative. I have a negative and a negative, so they're same. So my answer is going to be positive, 3.1. Now get out those calculators, type it in and check you're right. Negative 15.5 divided by -5, and I get 3.1. We are correct. All right, let's try number 2. 22.8 divided by 6. We are going to, again, bring that decimal point straight up. 6 can't go into 2. 6 can go into 22. So let's think. 6 times 4, 24. Too big. 6 times 3, 18. Okay, so 18. Do a little borrowing. That's 4. Bring down the 8. 6 goes into 48. 6 times 8. And it goes in perfectly with none left over. So I have a 3.8 or 3 8/10. Same sign, so it's positive. Again, let's type it in our calculators. Negative 22.8 divided by a -6. I get 3.8. All right. 3, 4, 5, and 6, we're just going to type it in your calculator. I want you guys to get practice on the, where is it? The decimal button and our negative button. That's what we will be using quite a bit. So let's just type it in. -8.4 divided by -12 gives me 0.7. Number 4, -19.6 divided by 6 gives me, it's going on and on forever. Now, I'm going to write this out and show you, and you guys are going to tell me what you think. 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, and then the calculator puts a 7. How do I write this? Do I write all those 6s in that 7? No. Remember how Mrs. Dager said, you guys are smarter than that calculator. That calculator just rounds things up. We see, though, that it's repeating. So my answer is 3.26. The 6 repeats, so the bar goes over the 6, and a negative and a positive is a negative, different signs. Okay? So again, if you see that 6s are repeating or the number's repeating, and all of a sudden the calculator spits a number out at the end, it's just because it's rounding it up. Okay, let's look at 5. Negative 0.45 divided by -9. Gives me 0.05. Excuse me. 2 negatives, so that ends up being a positive. And finally, number 6, -1.9 divided by 4 gives me negative 0.475. So again, we're not requiring any work from these. We're more looking for that you know how to type them in the calculator. But if you don't have your calculator, you do need this skill. This is all review from 6th grade. The only new part is applying the integer rules. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and you're going to continue with Mrs. Dagler on page 40.
All right. Hi, guys. So from my view there, Mrs. Piacenti was frozen for most of that. Let's see if it works for me, but we can hear everything. So it'll be interesting to see. But if I freeze, just keep listening because I am explaining everything. So on page 40, we take what Mrs. Piacenti just explained and we make it one step harder. Again, though, this is reviewed from 7th grade. So most of the steps are the same, except for step number 2 here. Make the decimal you're dividing by, the divisor, a whole number. Move the decimal. So for this first example, we've got 9.52 divided by negative 0.7. The top goes in the box, or the first number goes in the box. So when we rewrite it, we've got 9.52 divided by that 0.7. But we can't divide by a decimal, so we have to move our decimal place for the 0.7 until we get a whole number. Really what we're doing is multiplying by 10. So if I move this one jump and I move it here to the end of the 7, that means I times that by 10, which means I have to do the same thing for the 9.52. Do one jump, move it in between the 5 and the 2. So now that I have my decimal where it should go, I know where I can put it in my answer. I am going to rewrite this because right now I've got 2 decimal points in each number, and that is not allowed. So I'm going to rewrite it as 7 on the outside and 95.2 on the inside. Bring up your decimal point so it's part of your answer, and now the rest is exactly the same as Mrs. Piacenti explained it. Can 7 go into 9? Yes, it can. 1 time. 1 times 7. Get myself some more room. 1 times 7 is 7. Subtract to get 2. Bring down the 5. 7 can go into 25 3 times. 3 times 7 is 21. Subtract, I get 2. Or 3. No. 4. Bring down the 2. 7 can go into 42 6 times. 6 times 7 is 42. So we finally have our perfect 0 and we can stop there. Now I'm going to add back those integer rules. So if I look back at my question, I had a positive 9. Oh, geez. A positive 9 and a negative 0.7. So that's one of each, different signs. Means my answer is going to be a negative 13.6. So we're going to do one more together. Let's jump to number 1. So I've got negative 29.46 divided by 0.3. That divisor, that 0.3, cannot be a decimal. So I'm going to have to do one decimal jump or multiply it by 10 to turn that into a 3. And then I'm going to, there we go, have to do the same number of jumps. So one decimal jump to my negative 29.46. So now I've got negative 29 or negative 294.6 divided by negative 3. So now I'm going to set it up. The first number goes in the box. The 3 goes on the outside. I'm going to kind of ignore my negatives right now until I get to the very end. 294.6. I've already got my decimals in the right spot, so I'm going to bring it up. And I'm going to go ahead and do those steps of long division. So can 3 go into 2? No, it cannot. Can 3 go into 29? Yes, it can. 9 times. 9 times 3 is 27. Subtract, I get 2. Bring down the 4. Can 3 go into 24? Yes, it can. 8 times. 8 times 3 is 24. So I get 0 left over. I'm going to still bring down my 6. 3 can go into 6 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. So I'm left with nothing. So my answer here is 98.2. Now I'm going to pay attention to those negatives again. I have negative times a negative, so that will be a positive 98.2. All right, we're going to do one more the long way. We're going to jump down and do number 2 the long way. I'm just going to erase some of this here so I have more room. So number 2 is really interesting because we've got negative 64 divided by 0.08. So the divisor, or the number that comes second, is the one that can't be decimal. So we have to do 2 decimal jumps or multiply by 100 to move that decimal over 2 spots to put it at the end of the 8. If I do 2 decimal jumps for 0.08, I have to do 2 decimal jumps for the negative 64. Or really what I'm doing is multiplying by 100. But 64 doesn't have a decimal point. So I'm going to add one here at the end because it's always hiding there at the end. And I'm still going to do 2 jumps to the right because really what I'm doing is multiplying by 100. And if you typed into your calculator 64 times 100, you would get this answer too. So I'm going to do 2 jumps to the right. I'm jumping into nothing. So what am I going to fill into these jumps? Zeros. So I'm going to rewrite my question so it makes a little bit more sense. I've got negative 6,400 divided by 8 now. Now that I did my 2 jumps, I did my 2 jumps for the 64, and I've got negative 6,400 divided by 8. So the first number goes in the box. I'm going to ignore my negatives for a brief moment here. And again, I don't really have a decimal point. If I wanted, I could put it here at the end and bring it up. 8 goes into 64 8 times perfectly. So I'm left with nothing, nothing, nothing means I'm going to have 800 as an answer. Now I'm going to pay attention to my negatives again. I had a negative divided by a positive. So those are different signs. So my answer is going to be a negative 800. That's about as hard as it gets with those 2 double jumps. All right, so we're going to grab our calculators now, and we are going to practice typing in for question 3, 4, 5, and 6. For question 3, negative 9.75 divided by 0.6, and I got negative 16.25. Please pause this video at any moment. Try these questions on your own, and then check your answers with mine. Negative 9.87 divided by negative 0.3. I got 32.9 because I had same signs. It will be positive. Question 5, 78.2 divided by negative 0.04. I got negative 1,955. And negative 7.08 divided by 1.6. I got negative 4.425. So for all of these questions, we are going to be using our calculators. But again, if you don't have your calculator, you are going to be doing it the long way. So that's why we went over a few the long way. But moving forward, we are going to be using our calculator for these. So tomorrow when you get back to class, we'll do a bunch of practice. Anything you'd like to add, Mrs. Piasenti? Are we good? We're good. So see you guys later.